Hello there, I'm coverkillernation, and another great heavy metal weekend of releases has just concluded. Now, as you can tell by this graphic right here, well, there was a lot I wanted to talk about, and I didn't get to 3 of them. That's not very good. However, here we are with 5 recently released albums that you should check out, which means I'm going to get to them. Yay! And there's also going to be 2 others that were recently released over this past weekend that you definitely want to examine. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Here are 5 recently released albums that you need to investigate immediately. And our first examination is Coming Home from the band Pain. Now, if you're unaware of what Pain is all about, you probably are and just don't know it. Especially if you were a fan of the Lindemann project from last year. It included Peter Tatterton, who is the mastermind behind Pain, as well as Hypocrisy, as well as the Abyss Studios, and was also in Lockup. But at any... Not prison, by the way. That's a band. But at any rate, Pain is sort of an industrial side project where it's kind of just Pete's baby to play around with and do whatever he wants with a little bit. But he does like to kind of tailor things a little bit more toward the industrial market, I guess. It's sort of just this industrial weird rock project that he does and just sort of toys and tinkers. The first couple of albums by this group are considered legendary. The most recent couple have certainly found favor with a newer generation. Coming Home certainly has that same idea, and designed to piss you off the very first cutoff of this album, feels like it would be just as well being at home on the Lindemann release, Skills and Pills, that was released in 2015. And it definitely has sort of that same charm. Even though these lyrics may seem a little bit juvenile at times, somehow the way in which it's delivered and the music that surrounds it doesn't have that same feeling as it does perhaps from a Boots and Blood or maybe an early Limp Bizkit song. That's a callback to today's other video. Ha ha ha! Well, at any rate, this is an album that's very strong in the fact that it has a very laissez-faire attitude toward it. And this is also one that showcases Peter's, natural singing voice a little bit more. It's not something that showcases his gruff or his death metal vocals at all times. Instead, it opts to go for that softer register. And that actually creates a nice duality on this disc. It gives it a nice industrial charm with approachable vocals, and overall just a very nice little set of tracks. I really would recommend Black Knight Satellite, the title track Coming Home, Call Me, which really kind of sounds almost like heavy metal radio should be calling him, and also the very final cut, Starseed, which decides to go in a different direction to finish this album off, and go for something a little more eerie until about the 3-minute mark, where it explodes into what you've heard over the last 9 songs on this disc. All in all, not that bad. Definitely check it out. Up next, we have Norma Jeane with Polar Similar. This is a 13-track affair from here in 2016, just released from this metalcore group from Georgia. Now, these guys, whenever you think of metalcore, you kind of think of the whole kill switch engage format. This one kind of has a little more of a Dillinger Escape Plan twist to it, in the fact that it feels very chaotic and it has a lot of high energy and high intensity that sort of swirls around its music. What's interesting about this album is that we have a 4-part series that happens as this album is being played. We have The Planet, which is track 1, The People, which is track 5, The Nebula, which is track 9, and The Nexus, which is the final track, number 13. And mostly these serve as sort of instrumental breaks, which the one that really shines its way to me is The Nebula, which comes after Reaction, which is a 5.5, nearly 6-minute cut that just has a lot of intensity. It's sort of a slow churn, and it's one where everything is sort of reaching a boiling point at this stage with this song, and to have The Nebula come directly after that almost provides you with the moment to breathe that is kind of necessary. But The Nexus, the very final part of this 4-part series, is a 10-minute, nearly 11-minute long cut that actually has lyricism and feels more like a standard Norma Jeane song, but expanded in order to really, I guess, last the runtime. And this one's very creative. I have to give them a lot of credit on this one, considering it's not a move that a lot of metalcore bands are really willing to take, and they opt to take that chance, and it was successful for them. Now, a lot of the tracks on this album are going to sort of hover between the 2.5-minute to the 4-minute mark, with a couple of odd ducks that are able to approach and actually supersede 5 minutes, heading towards 6. Those are the moments where the band showcases their ability to hold attention, considering they are unrelenting in, really keeping their foot directly on your jugular throughout this. You have to really admire the intensity on here. The vocals are a mix of chaotic screams with some cleans that are able to really offset very nicely with one another. This is an album that flows fairly well, and it's one that doesn't exactly get old. And I think that those breaks in between some of these moments help a lot. So if you like metalcore, and you've heard Norma Jeane before, and apparently if you're Christian, because every album of theirs has gone to like #1 or #2 on the Christian charts. So apparently if you're Christian, Norma Jeane, hunky-dory for you. Check this one out. Next up we have Marillion with Fear, which is actually short for Fuck Everybody and Run, or Fuck Everyone and Run. These guys are really prog rock kings that date all the way back to the first portion of the 1980s, and this is a 5-track album that may seem a little bit harrowing for those who opt to take its journey, but it's one that certainly is worth it. Now, considering this is prog rock, it's a little bit more on the softer register whenever it comes to aggressiveness. This is one that is able to combine some of those more mid-tempo guitar passages that are then offset with lush atmospheric moments that sort of build toward the next section of the song. And you need that considering 3 of these 5 tracks supersedes the 16-minute mark, including the near 20-minute long track 3 entitled Believers. El Dorado, which is the first song, is 16:44 by its own right, and 16:45 is the runtime of the final cut, The New Kings. And really, what you get from this is a very nice fluctuation and exercise in the way in which a song is crafted. You hear a lot of really nice soft tones that are able to be offset by some more aggressiveness, or at least some more mid-tempo range material. The guitar work is stellar, and really just the overall way this is orchestrated and put together is very well timed. That's the one thing about this. They really know how to set up a track in order for its length to be really worth it. There's a lot of payoff with each of these cuts. Now, the 2 tracks that don't make that time frame are still not under the 6-minute mark. We have Living in Fear at 6.5 minutes, and White Paper, which is able to supersede the 7-minute mark. And really just the way in which this is set up is kind of masterful. You have a long cut, you have a short cut, a long cut, a short cut, and a long cut. You never feel like you're too overwhelmed by this album, and it ends up becoming a very nice listen. Is this really going to rank up in Marillion's discography with some of their classics from the 1980s? Well, I think it's going to be one that's going to be top 5 material, but it's certainly one that stands on its own as a unique display of one of the best real progressive rock bands to come since the 1980s, really putting on a clinic as to how to write an album. So definitely scope this one out. Our next observation is my surprise of the week! This is obscure Sphinx with the album Epitaphs, and man oh man, these guys are a Polish doom metal band that's able to fuse in some post-metal as well as just some old-fashioned sludge. And this is one that reminded me a lot of that Inter Arma album from about, say 2 months ago, with the way in which that sort of wall of sound is built and sort of chugs along, sort of slogs along, especially throughout the first 2 tracks of this album, Nothing Left and Memories of Falling Down. This is a track that boasts 3 tracks over the 10-minute mark, but really, what is the huge big surprise, not so much the slap in the face, but instead the one that sort of throws the water on your head and reminds you where you are, is whenever you get into Memorare and Sepulture, which is tracks number 4 and 5, and I no doubt butchered that second word. And the reason why is because you get this track that's largely atmospheric. It's one that feels like it's in a dark, dank chamber, almost as though you're wandering an old, abandoned building, and you hear just these soft vocals from their female vocalists sort of around you and swirling. It's a really, really good atmosphere. It's a terrific experience, and it's a little bit cerebral and haunting. And then, of course, the follow-up to that, Sepulture, which I just pronounced a second different way because I don't know how to say it. I'm sorry. I apologize. Please don't kill me. Has a lick right there at the beginning that sounds like it's from a Tool song, and then just chugs its way through nearly 6 minutes of bliss. I mean, this is just a really strong album, something I didn't expect to sort of come out of nowhere and really impress me, but that's exactly what it did. Check these guys out. Our final observation today comes via the one-man band, Belenos, and the brand new album, Kornog. Now, this project is from France, and it's a black metal project that infuses pagan metal, heathen metal, whichever you like to really call it, within that black metal, and it's something that molds together very, very nicely. And this is a project that's been going for quite some time. This is the 7th full length. Their first one was back in the earliest parts of the millennium, 2000, 2001. And really, it just showcases the building blocks of what makes this style of music kind of really, not so much accessible, but something that black metal fans will kind of tend to flock to a little bit, that they really enjoy, considering it still has the loudness, it still has just the downright sonic and aural intensity that black metal is able to provide, while also offsetting it with some of those pagan chants, some of those pagan choirs, some of those softer moments, those more of the earth moments that certainly give pagan metal, or that certainly give folk metal, a little bit more of its respite. Why so many people tend to flock toward that direction. That combined effort is something that has always been appreciated by fans of bands such as Moonsorrow, and this is one that could easily be seen as somewhat complementary, with the exception of this one leaning a little bit more toward the black metal department. The second track on this album is nearly 13 minutes in length and showcases all of the tools within the Belenos toolkit, so this is one that you're certainly going to want to check out. I would tell you the name of it, but I can't pronounce that, and I am not shitting all over someone else's culture, because that ain't right, and I don't want to be an asshole for like the 5th time today and the 7,000th time in this. I shouldn't care at this point, but I really want to pay respect to each individual culture, even though that's really hard to do sometimes. But it's a great track. It's nearly 13 minutes, and it is 13 minutes well invested, and the second to last track is the same way, considering it's nearly 8.5 minutes. These are not necessarily all longer songs. There are some that are able to go toward the 5-minute range, even 2 that are really 3 minutes or less, but either way, the way in which this is put together is really the selling point, considering it keeps that offset or that duality going between the black and the folk or pagan metal in this variety. It does not lay off the volume. It instead just continues to enhance and build itself and kind of rewrite its own history. It's kind of cool in that variety, so scope this one out. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. 5 recently released albums that you definitely need to check out, and hopefully this week I will do a lot better in getting to all of the albums I wanted to with full reviews, because 4 out of 7, that's not a passing grade. That kind of sucks, but, you know, life sometimes gets in the way. What are some albums that are coming out this week, which is the week of the 16th, that you are excited about? Of course, we know about the Pope Star EP by Ghost. We just talked about their new song, as well as a couple of the other big albums that are on the horizon, including one from Heaven Shall Burn. Let me know what your favorites of the upcoming week are in the comments below. And let me know if there's anything that I missed from this past weekend. My name is coverkillernation, and I will hopefully see you next week whenever we talk about 5 more recently released albums that you definitely need to check out.